Hello, I'm Stephen from Autodoc, and in today's video I'm going to be replacing the rear brakes on the Z3. And when I say rear brakes, I'm not just talking rear pads and discs here, I mean all the brakes. Following on from my incident with the smoking rear brakes, I decided that it was best just to replace everything at the back there on the braking system. You see, I couldn't be sure if it was the handbrake shoes or the actual brake caliper that was seized, that was causing the brakes to be binding. And I didn't want to get underway with the job, everything apart, and suddenly find that I didn't have all that I needed to complete the job. Now the whole setup is like 25 years old plus, so it makes sense to change everything at this point. And this is what everything looks like. We've got Bosch pads and a set of discs. We've got the wear sensor here. 2 brake hoses. Now these are the ones to the calipers. I'm not going to change the other ones, so before you say, oh, that's not everything, there's a reason. 2 calipers here, Apec calipers. They do want the old ones back, so I'll get a surcharge refund on that. Here's the brake fluid from Napa, 2 litres. I've got the handbrake shoes here and a fitting kit. 2 ATE handbrake cables. These are the clips that hold the cables to the underside of the car. I think they're actually on suspension arms. And these are the spring clips for the calipers. And those are the spring clips for the brake hoses. So I think you'll agree, quite a few parts. I'm going to begin here by disconnecting the handbrake cables in the car. We have 2 little 9mm lock nuts. And 2 12mm nuts here. Take some slack off the handbrake there and loosen these 2. Removing this little tab, and now those handbrake cables are no longer fixed to the handbrake lever. So we now go under the car. Now we could lower this heat shield here, and I may need to fix things right here. But I'm going to try and do it without, because I can actually see in there where the cables pass through to the interior. I had hoped that I could just pull the handbrake cables through where they enter the vehicle. However, they were fighting back, so I am going to have to remove, or at least loosen, this exhaust heat shield. And we've got a series of 10mm nuts that fit over pre-formed studs in the floor pan. I'm hoping I can just bend this back enough. I don't really want to remove the whole thing. It's very close to the prop shaft up there. The accessibility is terrible. It's actually going to be really hard to film and work under here at this angle. This is a pleasing surprise. I tapped the cable where it enters the tube up there with a long screwdriver and a hammer, and it came free. I was able to get a pair of water pump pliers in for this one, and this is now free as well. They're not fully releasing, so I think I might have to do something else inside the car. Back inside the car, all I needed to do was to lower the handbrake lever as it was still up. Just like that, they both pull out. I've got the new cables here. Now I'm going to actually fit those through now into the car. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this first, well, it's because I only want to be in the middle of the car, right under there once, and I want to do that early on because this is the only time I'm going to be using these ramps during this process. I don't like using these very much. I'm always worried I'm going to drive right over the back of them and cause all sorts of damage. But on the flip side, I do feel much safer being right under the car when it's on these. So I can just take care of this handbrake bit in the middle there first. And I wanted to do the interior stuff while I was still relatively clean at the start of this process. These cables are not handed. Part numbers right there if you can see them. Threading these through. That little rubber bit there needs to be pushed right in. Gonna be a two-handed job, I should probably rephrase that. With the cables now through to the interior, we can get these nuts on here. I've initially fitted these 12mm nuts on the handbrake lever here. The cables are fitted in terms of where they come through to the car. There were some really annoying plastic sleeves that were completely rigid. But there are two guide tubes, and the plastic that surrounded the cable did not want to go through that guide tube. And it's kind of compacted. It's not ideal. I might cut that away, the bit that's sticking out. I'll show you under the car, I can't explain it now. But the new cable is essentially ready. I just need to fit the new clip there. So now I'm going to turn my attention to this side, the offside rear. This is the problem side. This is where the smoke came from when we had that little drama the other week. So really, it's just a case of getting this all apart now. $7mm Allen key bolts, sliders that hold the caliper to the caliper carrier. Get this caliper out the way. 16mm bolts for the caliper carrier to the hub carrier. These are not that tight. $6mm Allen key bolt which secures the disc to the hub. That was already loose. When brake components get really hot, anything that's rusty gets very red. Kind of changes colour slightly. And then in here you can see the handbrake shoe assemblies. Using a 5mm Allen key in here, we kind of push and twist. And that is released. I'm just releasing some tension on this adjuster here. I'll take that all the way in. Releasing this upper spring. And remove the little adjuster. Remove the shoes, and you can now see this little segment here where the handbrake cable goes through, and we can now remove the cable where it passes through the back plate just in here. I've heard that these often seize. This is the new one. It's essentially this bit here that seizes inside here. Hopefully this one plays ball. I used a punch to act on effectively this piece here. And it came out with minimal fuss. I am so pleased. I now need to clean up this filthy back plate. With everything cleaned up, I'm just applying some copper slip to this surface. This prevents a squeaking sound when you apply the handbrake. And the same around the other side. We don't want this to get onto the mating surface of the linings, but it's just where this area here moves. I'm also going to apply some copper slip to this to prevent this from ever being a problem in the future, because as I said, this can seize, making it very difficult to remove. Even if it won't be my problem, it'll be someone's. And this can now be fed through the back, and that has been fed through. It's giving this little handbrake linkage mechanism a clean up. That's nice and clean now. There's plenty of free movement in this. This doesn't seize. And then once again, by opening this up, it exposes this, and then the handbrake cable can go through that. And I put the little pin in and then close that, which means the pin can no longer exit because this is blocking it. That is just going through. It's quite a tight fit through the handbrake cable for some reason, but it's gone through okay. At least it won't be falling out. I've also cleaned up this little adjuster with some brake cleaner. This is pretty free. What I'm going to do is just put a little bit of copper slip on here to ensure that it stays free. There we go. Here are the replacement handbrake shoes. These are from Vaico, and here is a fitting kit which is from Bosch. It's now a case of reassembling all of this. Refit one of the shoes. The shoe is secured with the pin and the spring, and this is all correctly located here. The adjuster is fitted in there and correctly located, and everything's correctly located at the bottom here. Refitting the spring, slacken that off a bit to minimise the work and effort required in getting this spring in place. There we go. Just a quick recap. So we've got the top adjuster located correctly and the spring, two retaining spring and pins. Moving down here, we've got the lower spring, and we have that handbrake quadrant piece correctly located in the shoes. This is the first set of handbrake shoes I've replaced on a BMW, and some might say there's a quicker or easier way to do it. Well, I'm open to suggestions, but that's all done. Now this adjuster here can be reached through one of the wheel bolt holes once discs fitted. But before I do that, I'm just going to give the shoes a bit of a wipe with some brake cleaner, because I might have accidentally transferred some copper slip to them with my greasy hands. So here we are, my new brake discs. Let's take a minute to compare old with new. They are the same. Both disc surfaces, and not forgetting the drum surface inside for the handbrake shoes. I'm now going to fit the drum, and then we can perform some basic adjustment of these handbrake shoes. I know the handbrake cable's really slack. I'm going to be doing this, so turning this adjuster wheel, which brings the shoes out until it locks up the disc stroke drum assembly, and then I back it off a bit. I'll be doing this with the disc drum on, but this is the theory of what I'm going to be doing. Get the drum on. I call it a drum. It sort of is a drum, isn't it? It's a disc and a drum. whatever it is. It's a bit of both. So to get that lined up, and I can feel the wheel, the knurled wheel, let's call it that. And now I just need to keep turning that click at a time until this locks up. Grab a cup of tea. This could take a while. I've lost my knurled bit again now. Where are you? Come on. Expose yourself. Well, maybe not. Right, that's locked up now, so I can back that off a little bit. And now that turns. So that's the initial adjustment done. Tighten the adjuster till it locks this up, then back it off like 3 clicks. Time to refit the caliper carrier, but I don't want this horrible red scruffy thing, so I'm going to now strip that back and then I can spray that silver. Wearing suitable eye protection and looking like a moron, I can now strip this back. I don't like this attachment, I'm going to get another one. Anyway, you get the general idea. That's looking a lot better. Doesn't need to be perfect. I just don't want it red. While I'm waiting for that VHT paint to dry on the caliper carrier, I just want to take a minute just to explain why I'm not changing these inner brake hoses. And that's because the front to rear brake lines do need some attention, and I don't want to disturb that joint, which I know is going to be a nightmare. So I will be coming back to that at a later date. And for the time being, we're just replacing the outer brake hoses to the caliper. And this shouldn't be a problem because it has had a new brake line that runs from here to the next section. So that shouldn't be too much of a problem. I can just cut this pad wear sensor because I've got a new one, and I'm going to clamp off that hose. Then I can just cut this brake hose off as well. That brake hose is clamped off. These brake hoses are so hard, I'm slightly concerned that when I release that, they won't open up again. I'm quite frustrated because I don't think I've got this clip here, and I really need that. That could hold me up today. The caliper is detached. I also need to replace this little clip here that secures the handbrake cable. That's broken, but I have got a new one. Oh, this just unscrews. I didn't realise it would be so easy. And here is the part number for the replacement clip. There we go. That's as tight as we're going to get that. That pushes in there like that. Beautiful. The caliper carrier has now dried. All prepared with copper slip. Just applying a little bit of Loctite to the mounting bolts. Tightened to 67 Newton meters. It's ready to receive the caliper and the pads now. Here we have the new caliper, Apec, in its box. Let's take a minute to compare old with new. It's interesting to note that the actual casting of this is a BMW ATE part, so it would have just been refurbished. They do want the old one back, so no doubt that will end up on someone else's car at some point in the future. Good luck to them, it's rotten. It's here, ready to go. I bought some new slider bolts because I didn't want to take a chance on the old ones. I didn't know what the status would be on them, but the component is correct. This one, incidentally, absolutely stinks from where it was burning up. I don't know how hot that got, but my God, I could smell it a mile off. I can't wait to get that in that sealed bag and get it out of here. But let's get this one fitted. Also got my set of brake pads here, and also a Bosch wear sensor. Apply some silicone grease to these sliders. And fit them. These new slider pins require a T40 Torx instead of the Allen key on the previous ones. Doesn't make any difference. I'm just fitting the pad wear sensor to the inner pad, like that. Fit the outer pad. Now we can get the caliper into place. Once tightened, the caps are fitted. Now we can turn our attention to the brake hose. They're not handed. Those are the part numbers there, if you can see. Remove this little bung. Screw in the brake hose. They don't have a washer. It's just a taper fit there. And it's a 14mm spanner size. We tighten that. Once that's tight, we can move across and disconnect this. Attempting to secure the hose with a 14mm and using an 11mm brake union spanner, I'm trying to loosen this. It is solid. I'm going to apply some careful heat to this. Okay, so things have come to a grinding halt, and there are a few problems which I'll show you now. So first of all, this would not come undone. It didn't matter what I did with it. I tried my usual snap-on, really snug 11mm brake pipe union tool. That, I've never known that round anything off, but that is not going anywhere. Now, I heated this up. I really heated this up a lot. In fact, I have concerns for a plastic clip that lives in here, but it still won't shift. So there's not much more I can do today. The caliper's fitted, the carrier's painted. I've just tucked the wear sensor wiring into there for safekeeping for the time being, into my nice shiny new spare wheel. The wiring on the car is just cut off here, and I've left that in place, and I'll take care of that later. Even if this had have come undone, this spring here I haven't got, and I need, because that's quite compressed. So I'm going to have to order this. I'm also going to have to cut this off. Now, fortunately, there's actually quite a lot of brake pipe here. This section has already been renewed, and I think if I cut that off there, I can get a new union on there and then re-flare it at the end, and then I think there's enough to work with. Obviously, I've got a new one of these. In fact, it's already on here. I've just cable tied a glove over the end of it to prevent any moisture from entering the system here. And in terms of on the car side of things, that brake hose is clamped off, so I should not lose any brake fluid. In fact, nothing's come out. The wheel's going to go back on. I'm going to get the car away in the garage, and this is going to be a problem for another day. I've just cut this off, this old cable here, because the new cable is ready in position there. For when I tackle this side, who knows what joys we'll find on this side. I'm going to make sure I've got enough stuff ready just in case I have the same performance. I'm leaving that exhaust heat shield down for the time being, and there's a reason for that too. Because my other complaint, gosh, I'm moaning today, aren't I? And that's that on the replacement cable, this is where it passes through a tube in the floor pan and then goes up to the handbrake. On the replacement, just on here, there was what looked like some sort of grommet, like a rubber or plastic sleeve, but it was absolutely solid, and I couldn't push this in for the love of God. I mean, it wouldn't go in. So in the end, what I had to do was to get it in position, spray it with WD,
and then progressively tighten the nut on here, and it kind of pulled this in. But what it's done is it's left a kind of puckered up bit of plastic here where it kind of compressed it. I don't know why that plastic was on there. I hope it isn't something I should have removed before I fitted it, but I thought it was just there as a guide to kind of lock it into position. But it's so tough. So I'm going to go underneath quickly now and just show you what is actually there and what is causing the problem. And it's there. You see the two white bits that are kind of gathered up there. I'm not sure whether I should cut those off with a Stanley knife blade or something, or just leave them there because they will only compress to a certain extent once the handbrake's in use. It's just not right, and that bothers me.
The strange thing is, I wasn't going to do this today. It's my last day off because I work quite long hours and many days in a row, and then I get blocks of days off. This is my last day off before I go back tomorrow. And I wasn't going to do this because I had toyed with the idea of having a nice lazy day and just chilling out. And I regret doing it now because I'm leaving this kind of unfinished, and I hate that. I like to finish at a convenient stopping point where everything's ready to go and the car's still drivable. So yeah, a bit ratty really. Happens from time to time. It's not always puppy dogs and flowers, is it? But on a brighter note, all my bits for the rest of the job are neatly stored here in the box. I guess I can get my money back on that old unit there. That'll be one side, it's 36 quid. Not to be sneezed at. And there's always another day. This isn't my main car, it is in the garage. I shouldn't get so hung up over this, but I just like things right, which you may have gathered by now if you watch my videos. So I'm going to leave this here. I'll see you again soon. Next video will be me making good that offside brake pipe, metal brake pipe, and then starting work on the other side of the car. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again in another one very soon.